second session of the 2015-2016 Farmers and Ranchers College was held Wednesday at the U.S. Meat Animal Research Center near Clay Center, Nebraska. A topic of conversation at this year's event was the U.S. MARC itself. About a year ago, the New York Times published an article critical of animal handling and welfare at the USDA site. An agency investigative panel visited the MARC after and found no evidence of poor animal handling, abuse, or inadequate veterinary care. At Wednesday's seminar, we talked with the U.S. MARC's Livestock Operations Manager, Chad Engle, about the impact of that article, the questions he receives from visitors touring the center, and the scope and size of the research location in southeast Nebraska.
We're 34,000 acres, about 8,000 cows, 6,400 head feed yard, two other species, sheep and swine as well. There's about 2,800 ewes and about 600 sows in our swine operation. It's all federal property. The cattle are federal, except for University of Nebraska owns a certain portion of them, but by and large they're owned federally, and it's all done for research. The land was a formal naval ammunition dump. 50 years ago, it got removed from that and reassigned to the USDA, and the Meat Animal Research Center was born.
What are some of the research projects that you're working on here?
So I like to say we cover everything from conception to consumption and study it all in between. One of the longest standing and oldest projects that we have out here is the Germplasm Evaluation Project, or GPE, as it's referred to out here. And that's 18 different breeds of cattle that are from the most prominent used bulls in the industry currently, and their progeny are evaluated for everything from feed efficiency to fertility to docility, you name it. We look at it and get the data on it.
So about a year ago, the New York Times did a piece on the U.S. MARC, and it was kind of surrounded around animal welfare, not only now, but years in the past as well. How do you think that piece affected the operation?
Well, it was certainly something we had to work through. It was not consistent, with what we do on a day-to-day basis out here. We have really good stockmen. We have really good animal handlers, and they're compassionate and they care about the place and the animals. And I'd vouch for all of them. If you had an operation at home, you'd let these guys run their cattle for you. They're really good at what we do, and that's been my experience since being here. Is we have really compassionate stockmen. They work really hard, and they do a good job of taking care of the land and the livestock.
You do tours around this operation as well. Tell me about some of the visitors that you get and what they know or what they don't know about livestock handling.
Absolutely. Well, we get everything from people from Scotland, England, to come here, Australia, to the local FFA chapter down the road. And so you really would be shocked at the type of questions we get. Everything from why do you confine a cow and feed it, to what are they eating, to I can see out there that you have all different kinds of colors. Why is that? And it's really an eye-opening thing for me on how much information is needed to be put out there to the public. And if MARC can help serve a role in that, it's a really fun part of the job.
Is it possible to change opinions?
Absolutely, and we think it's not, and I'm certain there's some people that you can't, but you never know who you're talking to. You never know who's in that van with you or who's watching your operation. And I have a thank you note that I saved in my office from an individual that said that they were a vegetarian before coming to MARC, but after hearing about how we care for our animals, how we ensure the meat that they eat is safe, they were reconsidering their position. So there's always an opportunity to change minds, and that's something that's really rewarding. You
said in your presentation today that you guys have put a real emphasis on animal handling. Tell me what you mean by that.
So we are always collecting data. We're always running animals through to maybe take a weight, take a hide sample, perhaps a little swab off there, maybe a nasal swab to see what kind of bugs are working on them. And so when you run those cattle constantly through a facility, animal handling is even more critical than normal, because those cattle really need to stay calm. They really need to work for you. So we spend a lot of time on training with our crews on how to do that, what to look for, how to ask those cattle to move, how to tell them where you'd like them to go, make it be their idea, and do it in a low stress and quiet way, so that when those cattle come through, there's not a great opportunity for injury, both to the handlers and to the animals, and we don't compromise the data. Those cattle don't get excited, go off feed when they get back home, or maybe have less fertility because they're nervous. We just really try to handle the cattle to take that factor out of it.
With 34,000 acres, how do you handle the grazing and the kind of the scheduling of all the day-to-day operations?
It's complex, and I like to joke when I give a tour that with 34,000 acres and 8,000 cows, this is a very diverse and complex operation, and that's before you add 45 scientists that are wanting to measure and score everything and write papers on it. So communication is really important. Well-trained individuals, good facilities, all those things that we really try to work on. And in the grazing component of it, if we can get a little bit more out of our land, doing it the right way, we just make a better deal for everybody. And I always like to think when people drive through the research center, I want them to be proud of what they see. I want them to see a well-managed facility, pastures that are grazed appropriately, cross-fenced, a lot of effort put in there, and guys that know how to handle the animals.
We've talked a lot about consumers, but for the cattlemen here today, what do they seem to be interested in, or from your day-to-day conversations with them, what do they seem to be interested in?
You know, they're interested in a lot of our data. They're interested in our feed efficiency stuff. They're interested in our breeding and fertility data. They're also interested in what's new. What's new with shade? What's new with animal handling? What are we doing with grazing? And so everything from production practices to meat quality and safety to how are we doing the day-to-day, turning the bolt, so to speak, you know, down to how many pounds of silage do you feed, type of thing. So I really enjoy talking with those producers. It's really a rewarding part of the job.